Hey everyone, here's another exciting Twitch with Tim Stelmach, Scott Kimball, Will Teixeira as our driver as usual, and I'm Chris Siegel, the senior producer. Today we are going to be playing Let's Don't Starve. I was going to say Let's Starve. That's the version that you play in the morning, I guess. So let's just get right at it here.
So why aren't we playing Payday 2?
I don't know. Why are we playing?
Because we're playing Don't Starve instead. Some of our announcements earlier said we're going to be playing Payday 2. That's being postponed.
Yeah, so we're postponing because we're trying to line up a very special guest for Payday 2. And fingers crossed, because if that particular person joins us, it will be awesome.
So Will, don't starve. That's what I want from you. Alright. So there's a number of reasons that we think this game is an interesting one to talk about for the Unreal Ascendant team. So I'm just going to sort of free associate here while he's getting started up. Obviously there's the aspect of being kind of alone in a hostile environment, this thing of wilderness survival, that especially the players of Ultima 1 will remember that experience from when they were first dumped into the city of Abyss. Not something that our entire game is going to be about, the way that this game is so heavily. But it's still a very interesting point of comparison for us. In particular, there's this journey of mastery that the player goes through in Don't Starve, right, where you start off really just scrambling to get the resources you're going to need to survive the first night without things in the dark ripping you apart. And eventually you're able to build up a lot more knowledge about how the world works, and a lot more of support structure for your characters. You have farms and D-boxes and what have you. The things that were hard in the early game are easy now, so you can master. And that's a character arc that we're very interested in. It has a lot to do with the character arc of a typical RPG. Though most RPGs focus much more on just combat with respect to that arc, and we're interested in hopefully a bigger variety of challenges. Scott, you I'm just gonna put you on the spot.
So there's definitely a lot of ecology aspects to Don't Starve that we really should be thinking about. Such as, planting flowers to increase your food production, herding animals from one area to another, or to have animals attack other animals that you. These are all things that
brings to the part of the star, right? You can't just cut down the trees. This process, which is more crafting. The other thing that I find interesting in this game is it does a pretty good job of not giving you the impression that everything in the environment is just there as a challenge to your class. Right? The creatures have their own relationships, things that will be aggressive towards certain other types of creatures, things that are useful to you or hostile to you, things that maybe one or the other can situation. The people the way that you manage bees, but when you interact with them in certain ways, you get killers and
the process of discovering these things is pretty interesting too. Like for those of us who don't use the wiki when they play Don't Starve, trial and error, some intuitive directions to approach things, but discovering all these relationships and usability.
Yeah, and I will say also, with respect to this sort of play, I'm interested in the combination of things that are really discoverable and things that are a lot more obscure. the latter sort of thing I find like really feeds into the community of a game, right? Like the formation of a wiki is one example, but you know, a lot of forum discussion, right, in a game's community can get driven around things that are not entirely obvious, right? So players come together to something, and that's obviously a balancing act. My personal experience with Don't Starve is I find that there's some things that I wish were more discoverable for me that just like be on the right side of my personal sort of frustration. It's a very hardcore game, but that's all dependent on the goals you adopt, obviously, for your design. So here we see Will is addressing himself to the critical task of building a fire. And in fact, it's kind of funny. The very first day in Don't Starve, I think that's Maxwell. He's like, "Hey, buddy, you better find something to eat." And he's completely tricking you because you can go through the first day without something. Okay, like you don't starve. If you don't build a fire, you are just out of luck. So he's not your friend. Yes, Don't Starve is the name of the game, but the first day is not. Don't get torn apart by the monsters in the darkness. That's actually something I was thinking about. Something else I was thinking about before. This game has a very extreme approach to the darkness. Right? Like most games will never let it get completely black, and Don't Starve will. I don't think we're going to be looking to have things ever get completely black in Unreal Descendant. But managing your light is something that is a big deal in the original Underworld games, right? Partly because just of the technological limitations at the time. We could have one light source in the world, which is no longer the case. But the interesting gameplay that came out of that is something that we're still kind of attached to. But in Don't Starve, it illustrates an interesting principle, right? Which is that when in a situation that would otherwise make the game unplayable, instead of ameliorating that situation, they make the decision to just put the player out of their misery, right? Like it's completely black, so we'll just have you get torn apart by wild beasts in the darkness. It's fine. So if the player's doomed, like don't let their doom be prolonged is one of the one of the maxims that I try to hold in my back pocket.
I imagine in the underworld, our darkness will be more prevalent.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Is another difference here, right? Is like in this game and another game that we look to a lot for this kind of gameplay, Minecraft. There's a strong emphasis on the day-night cycle, right? And Underground, that's not the case, right? So we've been thinking a lot about the player's relationship to light and darkness. What are the sources of light? How do they behave? And the day-night cycle gives you a set of rules that is consistent that you can make plans based on, and we like that kind of sort of short and medium and long-term planning. I don't know that we have much to say about right now without some spoilers and some things that are still changing, but we're definitely doing a lot of work on crafting a system where the player is making some planning decisions based on the Underworld's own rules about how light sources work. And he's succeeded in building a fire, so he's not about to get ripped apart by a grue. Oh, okay. So the very prominent interface element in Don't Starve up in the upper right corner, right, is your time of day wheel, right? Like most of the day is the yellow part, which is daylight, and then there's generally a prolonged period of dusk, which gives you a nice fair warning that nighttime is coming, and the lighting is dimmed during that entire period. But then during the blue part of the wheel, like there is no light source unless you provide it yourself. And even then, like if you go outside of the radius of your light source, you are in complete blackness. Do that, but don't get torn apart. Yeah. So when your character says it's so dark, that is your warning that the grues are about to come tear you apart. And the game doesn't call them grues, but of course they are. Any old school gamers will get that reference. What else do we like about Don't Starve? Another thing that is very interesting to me, like there's no notion of like playing through Don't Starve, right? Like it's procedurally generated. That's one of the things that I think I don't know. It's kind of debatable for me. Like, what do we mean by a roguelike game? And a lot of people do put Don't Starve in that category, but one of the characteristics there definitely is having this procedurally generated world. And again, sort of similar to Minecraft. In our case, we have a sort of crafted space that we're working with, but as compared to a lot of adventure games where your course through the game is pretty staged, right? Like this happens, this is Act 1, these are the encounters. In Ultimate Underworld and in all the Looking Glass adventure games, which we are going to be emulating, the content is not staged, right? The world may be crafted, but your course of encounters and situations is very much up to the simulation, and that's another thing that I really like about this family of games is they are really I think it takes a certain amount of confidence in your system to get hands off on the moment-to-moment authorship like that. Just have a situation and a set of tools, and to some extent, like Don't Starve barely even has goals, right? Like, obviously, goal 1 is don't starve, right? Like you're trying to survive, but there isn't necessarily an ultimate objective. There are some things that you can adopt as objectives, like exiting your world or going on an adventure mode run or something, but you are 100% still playing the game if you don't do any of that stuff, right? And all you're doing is just homesteading.
Make up your own goals, like to build a fort, build a cool homestead. Those are sort of the goals you create for yourself about other, beyond just survive for as long as possible. Will, what's your goal right now? What goals have you given yourself? Other than burning things, what is your goal?
So, my goal right now is to build a crafting station because this game has a lot of crafting, as you can see on the left side. Each one of these is one of the categories, so I can craft a bunch of tools. But the crafting relies on the crafting devices that you have to build yourself, a lot like Terraria, except not as many crafting devices. I think there's only like a handful in this game. So pretty much my first real big objective is crafting a science machine, which is it does science.
Now, are you just going to build it anywhere, or have you already laid out an area you want to be like your home?
I think I'm going to build it back where I did a circle of rocks, because it's not that rocks are super hard to find, but I definitely want to stay near the spot that I created the fireplace and spent the night at, because that fireplace more efficiently burns wood than not having a fireplace.
One aspect of the game that I think is interesting is it's very much a time management game, right? Like you only have so much time to do things in a day, and the more efficiently you can do those, the more you can get done. The less you are at risk at night if you have all the proper resources. I don't think we're really going to approach that in the world, but I don't think we're going to have not the idea that you have to be efficient with your day-to-day activities.
I imagine not. There's some mechanics that will probably have an element of that, right? Like the original Ultimate Underworld games had hunger and sleep, for example, and to the extent that we address those, which is still kind of to be determined, right? Those are things that we could adopt. But not the sort of like the severe hunger mechanic here, and the oppressive day-night cycle where every day there's things coming to tear you apart in the dark.
And Don't Starve, in the morning when light comes, the direction you choose to travel is important, right?